I think I've got too much light coming in here.
Yes, welcome everybody. We have Liz Parrish here, and Liz is the CEO of Bioviva. Many may know Liz. We've interviewed Liz before here on Science, Technology and the Future, and she's been like almost a fixture in the media. She's been the news in Australia, Norwegian TV, in England and America, almost on every talk show that I can really think about. A lot of podcasts too. So have you here again?
It's fantastic to be here. It's been a while since we checked in with each other, and quite a few things have changed since the time we last talked. So it's great to talk to you again, Adam.
Right. Yes. Great. And you've had 2 gene therapies. I mean, a lot of people were skeptical about this gene therapy because it's not regulated by the US. Maybe they thought you'd turn into a monster or grow an extra arm or even an extra head, right? But no, I can't see that you've grown an extra arm or an extra head, and you haven't died.
I'm not hiding anything behind my back. So we last talked, have come through regulation. They've been approved. There's been 2 approved in the EU, and congenital blindness. There's a gene therapy now in the United States. They're cost prohibitive. They're very expensive therapeutics, but a burgeoning area for regulated gene therapies. Of course, our company Bioviva works on gene therapies to actually affect biological aging and complex disease. So what we see going through trials are gene therapies that are for monogenic disease. So if somebody has a single gene mutation, we can replace that gene with a healthy copy. And then, so that's part of it. And the other part of it is cancer work. So now gene therapy is a huge proponent of cancer work. When I did the therapies, for a lot of people, I think that gene therapy still seemed like magic. It was something they thought really something that you could just go out and get. But in fact, you could. And the research had been around for many, many years. You couldn't necessarily just go out and take a therapy, but we're going to talk about how we've recently changed that for patients later in our talk this morning. But yeah, so I mean, it did surprise a lot of people when I did that, because much of the population still didn't know that the technology existed. And the other part of the population who did understand that it existed realized that I took one of the therapies that I took was one that a human hadn't taken before. And so they saw a great risk in that, that of course we didn't think was there.
Okay, yes. Right, yeah, and it seems as though you're fine, and you seem you're looking fine. I think a lot of people can say that you're looking younger than your age. In fact, I did a Google search, and that's one of the. It seems the suggestions hint that it's one of the most popular searches with regard to Liz Parrish is how old you are. But I'll let people do that. I'll let people find out for themselves on the internet if they really want to. Yeah.
Yeah, so, sure. You can always go and see how old I am. I've always been really open about that because that's part of the data is what is your age and what did you take and what was the outcome. So yeah, I'm glad that people like what's happening. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got a lot of attention, and a lot of people are really interested in the outcome here, and so. Well, people are interested in the outcome, but the outcome is heavily reliant on how it's portrayed. What kind of data have you been getting to biomarkers and to track the progress of the gene therapy, the outcome of the gene therapies you've been experiencing?
Right. So I'm kind of a 2-pronged test subject. One thing, we want to get some sort of efficacy data of what actually happened in my body. And on the other side, we wanted to ensure it's safe. So we can sort of separate the 2 forms of data. The safety data, number 1, I'm healthy. Number 2, I take cancer testing to ensure that nowhere in my body am I at risk of cancer or elevated risk. And all of my cancer risks are really low. And it's what we expect to see with telomerase therapy. So as far as risk type of biomarkers, those look fantastic. And as far as health biomarkers, like what sort of improvements did we see? We saw a 6-fold reduction in C-reactive protein. So my inflammation levels are very low, and that's a really good thing. And actually, those are consistently low. So I'm happy about that. We also saw a 50% reduction in triglyceride levels, which means better heart health. We continue to see that. I'll let you know if it changes. We don't know if after a few years things would go back and leverage out, or if this is a long-term, therapeutic. Gene therapy is still new technology. Let's see, what else did we see? We saw a 25% reduction in blood glucose levels, and sometimes my glucose levels are even better than that, but that seems to be a consistent average. And we would expect that with the myostatin inhibitor. So with the increased muscle mass and decreased fat, that's consistent with that therapy. Those are the biggest things that we saw. As far as telomere testing, I'll be doing another telomere testing soon. Everyone knows the original results. It was about 20-year increase in telomere length based on average age of the population. Telomeres are difficult. They're not a great biomarker of aging. They're a great biomarker of risk of disease. And as far as where they actually measure your telomeres from, it's your T lymphocytes, and it's kind of a speculative sort of area, but we were happy to see them lengthen. We knew that they should lengthen with the gene therapy, that it's really the only thing that can lengthen them to this extent. But we'll actually be matching my health data and my risk data with the telomere length to see if we can actually bring these markers together to create a more cohesive picture over time. So this is a sort of test that will go on and on and on.
Okay, that's fantastic. Did you get any C-reactive protein cells and the levels of C-reactive protein in your tissue or cells?
That would be something that one of the scientists for the company would have to answer that. I know that we definitely saw an elevation in the protein that is the myostatin inhibitor. As far as telomerase goes, it's not shared in the blood, so that's not something that is easy to measure, and that's actually been a difficulty in getting a measurement on that. It's more of a telomere length than how much telomerase you're actually
using. Well, it looks as though things are going very good so far. Now, if there were any other classes of tests that ideally you would like to have done but can't at the moment because of maybe financial restrictions or access to equipment, what would they be? If access to equipment and lab equipment or extra finances weren't a problem, what extra tests would you try and get done in order to assess the efficacy of the treatments that you've had so far?
Well, I think that this probably is a good place to start talking about how Bioviva is moving forward. So, because now we're going to put things into a bigger picture. So right now, what's important to do is give people a picture, an image of health on the biomarkers that we all agree with, okay? The biomarkers for aging are very difficult. They haven't really been vet out, and there's not one that really pinpoints us down to a small enough area of aging that we can really pinpoint someone's biological age very succinctly and give a prediction of how long that they might live. So right now what we do is we take a combination of accepted biomarkers and we try to paint a picture. Now, if I had loads of money, I would be investing in companies that are trying to get the window of accuracy of the biomarkers of aging smaller and smaller. That would be a great place to put money into analysis so that we can move forward. But then again, those markers have to be accepted, and then we have to move forward from there. So as far as testing and testing equipment, we're moving along in a sense of we have a big announcement in the last couple of weeks. We're actually moving into a partnership that's complete now, and we're offering patients to go through our partner company to actually get access to consensual gene therapy. So how does this follow into the question that you asked? It's not so much what we do with past data, it's how we move forward with the data now. So as far as my data goes, all is not lost. We did a lot of fantastic things, and as there's more exact accepted biomarkers, we can continue to do some amount of work. I have some tissue stored, and I have blood stored from before my therapies, and we'll continue to work with those. But now, how do we gain a bigger picture? We're actually suggesting that patients now go to this company that we've partnered with, Integrative Health Systems, and start partaking in gene therapies. And this is how we'll paint a bigger picture. So N equals 1 is fantastic. We can definitely say I didn't die and I'm not hiding a third arm behind me. I feel better than I did before. I know that personally. Some of my markers in my body look better than they did before. My liver function is better than it was before. My blood glucose, my insulin sensitivity is better, and a myriad of other things that we talked about. But now what we need to do is show that this works in 10 people, and then 100, and then 150, and then thousands. So how we move forward with this group, we actually have a whole team working on biomarkers now, and what would be the best way to move forward with patients. So now that we're sending patients to a company that can actually offer consensual gene therapy, because Bioviva could not do that. We couldn't find a regulatory route to do that. We can actually start getting data on what's happening with a myriad of therapeutics, not just the ones that I took, over greater numbers of people. And the biomarkers that are thrown into that pool and have already, been addressed and are already being aligned for those patients are what is really exciting now. And in order to talk more about that, you'd probably need to talk with one of our scientists. But Bioviva is moving into a platform
I'm happy to
company.
do that.
Yeah. So we'll actually be able to look at not just telomerase induction and myostatin inhibitors, but we'll be able to look at a myriad of gene therapies and some cell technology and see what's happening in patients. So this platform is going to be not only great for patients, which we're very excited that they can get access to the therapeutics they need, but it's going to be really great for our whole industry. We'll be the Amazon of biotech companies. And if a biotech company really thinks that they have something great and they've gone through animal studies and they've gone through some toxicology data, they can come and see what happens in 10 patients and imagine what investors would think of that if they can see if your drug is actually going to be successful before they start raising huge amount of funds for trials.
Yes, indeed. Wow, it sounds good. I'll provide a link to this, if I can, in the description, so people can follow that side of Bioviva as well. So, fantastic. So this would go some ways in convincing the larger populace too, if there's data across the number of people on these sorts of therapies that you're discussing. Is this just gene therapy you're discussing now? Is this only gene therapy, or is this other types of therapy as well?
We're focusing heavily on gene therapy, but we will bring in stem cells where they're applicable. And we definitely want to work towards a combinatorial therapy that will affect biological aging. In many cases, we'll ask patients to singularly do therapies so we can get as pure data as possible. But the idea is to come up with a combinatorial therapy that would best suit treating biological aging and complex disease in one fell swoop.
Okay, right, that's good. So, all right, so have you got an example of the type of combinations you think will be most popular or will work quite well?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be hard to say because then we would be speculating. I think that there's a lot of therapeutics in development right now that will surprise us, that will help us with things like breaking down glycation and lipofuscin and things like that. I would say probably one of our most powerful tools right now is lengthening telomeres, strengthening muscles, and safely and effectively, slowly as the technology becomes more readily available and better understood, some amount of senescent cell clearing. And that would probably be a good start. And then using some of the regenerative effects of stem cells in certain areas. Maybe one of the great uses actually that we'll be seeing in the next few years is ex vivo gene therapy, where we take stem cells out, the patient's own stem cells, lengthen telomeres, do gene therapies on the stem cells themselves, and see what sort of impact we can get using those stem cells that are genetically modified rather than the patient's own stem cells who have just gotten older as they've been in addition, been proliferated out. So actually making people's own cells young will be, I think, a big benefit of moving forward. But, you know, this is vastly based on what our medical doctors will do. So the company that we're working with can offer certain gene therapies, but of course the doctors have to accept the use for the patient, make sure that they fit a cohort and that they're treating a specific disease. And then of course, Bioviva will just be now running for data. What does the data look like in humans? And that gives us an opportunity to focus with bioinformaticians and you know, really hone in on what's working and what's not working in order to expedite to patients what they actually need.
Okay, that sounds promising. I'm looking forward to hearing about some of the results there for sure. And how will people be able to access the data? Will the data be transparent? Will people have...
The great thing about this data is that Bioviva will be a third party to it. Okay, so companies will come in with their own therapeutics. These are not Bioviva's therapeutics. Companies come in with their own therapeutics. The name of the company is taken off the therapeutic. Our doctors are given the protocol. They're given the understanding and the cohort of how to use the therapeutic. Then the patient, 10, 15, 20 patients receive the therapeutic, and we just analyze the data as a third party. We do a wide breadth of biomarkers and ensure that data isn't getting lost, and that even if we're treating a specific disease of aging, that we're actually looking at the aging biomarkers across the board. And to be as transparent as possible with this data will be what Bioviva is looking to do, but it will be contract specific with each company.
So sometimes the data might be, okay, so sometimes the data might be transparent or might be accessible, but other times it won't be. And so, yeah, people will just have to... I'm just wondering how are they going to do replication tests and double-blind tests later on? That's all.
Well, the idea is to get straight data through this platform, straight data through so many patients. And remember, a lot of the gene therapies right now are not double blind. It's you know, we're looking at producing a specific measurable protein in the blood from doing the gene therapy or in the cells. So with this, it's running directly for data. So it's not... it wouldn't be a traditional route, but I think that it will be better than the traditional route. I think that we can actually gather more data points and keep more data from being sunk in a sense that might be done in a proper FDA clinical trial. The data here would be used maybe for expedited use to actually bring to regulatory agencies and say, here's the data on 10 patients. And it would also be used, obviously, for these companies to get investors to show the power of their drug, or to get rid of that drug development, or to actually perfect it and make it better, to see how it actually works in patients in the greatest need, of course.
Okay, that's great. Now, you've been previously saying that you've been chasing down regulatory partners in the past. Now, you've had some success in the UK. You mentioned another place, but is there any others on the horizon that you think might be candidates for becoming regulatory partners or agencies that can sort of, yeah, what you've been doing?
Well, the thing is that if we want to do just a clinical trial, if we would like to do an 8 to 15 year route and raise, you know, upward of $1 billion, we can actually go anywhere. We will have to maybe do some of the preliminary work, and it might cost us more money to get involved, but you can run a trial anywhere in the world. So regulatory bodies are great for, doing that sort of slow route development. But we know that biotech needs a different route to do things. And we do want safe drugs. And of course, we want people to use regulatory bodies, but we don't want people to waste their time or investors' money any longer in biotech going that route. So if Bioviva chooses to do a regulatory route with a drug, that will be in the future. Right now, we're going to focus on the data.
I just had to unmute. The desirability as well. We've spoken about the feasibility a little bit there, but the desirability in terms of the the personal desirability, but also the wider ethical issues there. We think that if it will, on average, increase the probability of healthy life in the future, that's obviously an ethical motivation to pursue these sorts of things ourselves anyway, and to not have it slowed down by regulatory agencies if there's a high chance of success.
Right.
Yes,
so
I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that, right now we're most of the population at this point is guaranteed to die of biological aging. And so how are we going to change that? And how do you ethically change that? We send people to war all the time. People go and they die in the battlefield fighting for things of I think, less value. Sometimes, not all the time. I definitely am honored. I honor our troops and people for their great ideas of keeping things as safe and open and free in the world as possible. But my point is that we do a lot of things where we take risks, and taking a risk to make a healthier world, to create generations of humans who are better, stronger, faster, and smarter, and maybe don't go headlong into war for frivolous reasons, might be a really good thing to do. So we definitely right now are dying of diseases that very well could be treatable. And it really comes down to how we're going to spend our time. So we do talk about bioethics a lot. And when I first got involved, it was because I was at a children's hospital and I was asking them about experimental medicine for kids in the hospital who were dying of diseases. And it really was almost like blasphemy. It was, oh no, that's experimental medicine. We don't do that with children. And yet the kids are dying. We don't really have a good grasp of how we need to move forward with our thinking. We live by a bunch of myths that somehow we're not going to die of the same diseases that our parents died from, or if we are, we're just going to put off that sort of thinking, or maybe that's natural, or maybe that's this, or maybe that's that. But the truth of the matter is that it's unethical to let people die of potentially treatable diseases. And we really need to speed up biotech. If we are sitting on cures for disease, then we need to give people access to that medicine. And it may or may not work. We may have the cure for aging already. We very likely may not. But the only way to get the data and vet out what we are missing in the puzzle is by getting the data on what we already have. We've just become very risk adverse. And this risk aversion is probably one of the most unethical things that we could be doing.
Yes, I mean, we put people in cars and around heavy machinery a lot, and we're kind of used to that risk. It's kind of the risk that we've accepted in a sense over time. And a lot of people die on the road. A lot of people die crossing roads, but it's kind of like a given, well, they're the dangerous things in life. But we're not willing to take risks in areas that we're not familiar with. I think there's maybe a fear factor there in a sense. It's not knowing how to manage risks in these sort of unknown realms. That might be an issue there too. But the more we understand these realms, the more we'll be able to understand the risks involved And I assume the better we'll be able to manage them. And the way to do that is by trial and error as well, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think we still need to be take cautions, but I'm all for the proactive approach to healthcare, and especially if we have willing participants who know what they're doing.
Yeah, you have to make the right decision for you. We're not here to talk any patient or any person into taking a risk or a therapeutic that we think would be a great risk, but we are here to be reasonable. And to be reasonable, we need to realize that the great leaps that we need to make the world a better place. And they certainly are not doing nothing. I always laugh and people say, oh, you know, this problem will be solved and I'm just waiting for the therapeutic. And I laugh because I say, well, you know, I'm the most unlikely character to be sitting here running a company that's getting therapeutics to you. And if I had to get up and do this, you might just have to get up and participate too in order to get the job done. So don't assume somebody else will get it done for you. But we do have, since we've launched the partnership with Integrative Health Systems, and we've actually put out an email saying that people can go to Integrative Health Systems now to sign up for consensual gene therapy. It has been going blockbusters. We weren't really quite prepared for the outcome. And we have so many people, so many applications to sign up and have a consultation with a medical doctor on our team that, and we've got medical doctors signing up. Now we've got an influx of people saying, you know, that they want to treat patients and be part of this movement. Many doctors are risk adverse. They don't want to hurt their patients, but doctors become very tired of seeing their patients die of the same diseases over and over without an opportunity to offer them something new. So we're having a great influx and been quite overwhelmed by the response. So I'm happy to say that many people in the world are still seated in the realism that in order to get the job done, that they need to get involved and help pioneer the technology. And as those numbers come in and those pioneers are part of the movement towards making a healthier world, we'll be able to actually analyze the data and see what's happening over time. And more and more people will be comfortable with the idea of the therapeutics and getting involved. And so it should just snowball into a bigger process. But it's been, like I said, I'm in London this morning and we just launched several days ago. And you can tell I'm drinking my tea. I'm very tired. We've been really trying to keep up with this huge influx of interest.
Well, that's a good, from from my position, I think that's great that you've been able to get so much attention, get a lot of investor interest, and I guess the doctors and the people in the medical field are interested as well now. So, where do you see this heading? Where do you see this heading in the next few years? What do you predict? What are you excited about?
Yeah, so I see gene therapy, of course, heading in a fantastic direction. You know, we're seeing the DCAS system, basically a CRISPR system that's able to go in and modulate genes that we already have, maybe switching on and off genes that we already have instead of having to insert a copy of the gene that we want to upregulate. That's really exciting. I originally and still am interested in cures for kids. That's why I got into this industry. It just so happens that many of the therapeutics that will treat adults actually treat children as well. And right now we're seeing a gene therapy start for Parkinson's disease that actually helps children with neurotransmitter disease. So more and more we're seeing the crossing of therapeutics applying to both areas. Telomerase induction may help children with progeria. Anything that helps cancer and autoimmune, which we're seeing gene therapies come through, help both groups. And so I'm actually able to meet on my original wish of helping kids through this company, realizing that we have lots of candidates to help do that, an aging population. So as far as the gene therapies and the outcomes of clinical trials, it's really just going gangbusters. And Bioviva will work through our scientific teams, not only to collect data on the patients that are going through our network, which will be absolutely invaluable to see what happens with patients when we do this. But we'll actually continue to collect data on the gene therapies that are going through trials to see where they can be repurposed for complex disease, biological aging, and childhood disorders. So it's good times.
Fantastic. So, okay, that's really good. So would you say in the next 5 years, this will be pretty big, right? Like you mentioned, like not just your company, but the whole, I guess, gene therapy industry might have made quite a substantial progress.
Yeah, remember, so Bioviva.
In terms of levels of, yes,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
So remember, Bioviva is a platform. So we're not here to corner the industry. We're basically here to launch biotech. So we're here to ensure that in the next 5 years that, let's say, the 10 most promising small biotechs with genetic therapies actually have data that they can throw down and have already started their regulatory process with the ease of investment of having initial preliminary data in humans. So we're here to ensure that all of these companies are a success. I mean, I've always said that, but the media always tends to spin that and say, oh, you're this company running these 2 drugs. We're not running 2 drugs. We're a platform to run anything genetically and with cell therapy that would treat biological aging to see what the outcome is so that we can actually pinpoint the combinatorial therapy the fastest way possible.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, how long do you expect? I mean, it's hard to make a prediction, but if you were to sort of make a tentative sort of guess about how long it'll take for the average person in first world countries at the moment, I hate to say it, but like yes, have access to this, like people who earn less than $30,000 a year, when will they have these sorts of therapies in in the full? Bit of a broad question, I know.
Well, I would say right now we're allowing access. So what therapy you're looking for and what's the cost of that therapy is, that would be up to integrative health systems. So if you had something like renal failure or, maybe a problem with your heart or an organ specific problem, through that company now, I think those people could afford gene therapy. As far as if you want to do a whole body regeneration and do the gene therapy that I did, it's still pretty cost prohibitive and it would limit the amount of people who could do it. That company I know is trying not to offer anything that would be, over a couple $1 million. They're trying to stay underneath that. And actually we've worked with them intensively to try to get the cost of organ specific type treatments under the $100,000 mark. And we continue to work with them and medical doctors to see how we can actually achieve that by co-opting the buying of gene therapies and ensuring that people are actually getting cost-effective gene therapies through these companies. So it's a pretty exciting time. So for some people, it's right now. But as far as a whole body rejuvenation, we don't have that therapy. We don't have that therapy, but if you were to do something again like I did, it's still pretty cost prohibitive. Making gene therapy is still a very skilled nascent technology. It takes months to build one therapeutic, and it's literally, quadrillions of, very purified genes that are then placed in a viral vector and thrown into the body. So it's still quite expensive and not necessary for most people. I think that most people that are interested in that are in a high net worth bracket and they're running out of time and they want to ensure that they buy themselves some time to get to the next combinatorial therapy that will help them live even longer. We hope.
Okay, so like if you were to have if you put your crystal ball on and say, well, what will the industry, the gene therapy and cell therapy industry look like in 15 years? If that is that too much of a
oh gosh,
too far into
it
the
is
future?
really difficult. It is really difficult. That's a difficult question. You know, I'm not a fortune teller. I really work in the realism of right now. So if we get a lot of people through, and this year we're collecting the data. Remember, that's all Bioviva does, is collect the data. We're collecting the data on patients, and we see really good data. And in 2 years, the data continues to be consistent, or the patient is just relatively healthy, and exceeding the expectations of their age group. This is what we hope to see. This will expedite things significantly. The more companies we can get through to sort of white label, in a sense, their therapeutic, so that they can slap that down on the table of regulators and say, here's 10 patients and here's what happened, and give it to their investors, we can really ignite this industry. We can really get this thing going. And in 15 years, we certainly should have at least 3 or 4 therapeutics. I would say that's very conservative. 3 or 4 gene therapies that treat biological aging. They may be RNA therapies, they may be gene therapies, they may be CRISPR editing, or again, modulating the genes in the cells, but we certainly will have several. And I would say 5 is very, very conservative, because we know now that most companies and most researchers are now looking at the hallmarks of aging. They're looking at what's happening at the cell, because they know there's no really other way to cure disease. And then remember, about 50% of the therapies that are going through trials now in gene therapy are cancer therapies. And so, you know, this will be a burgeoning area that will be extending human lifespan in a healthy way, and eradicating tumors and cancers long before they're you know, out of control in the human body, and give us maybe even some sort of immunization against cancer. I think in 15 years, we'll be working not only on this platform, but we'll be working in a lot of other realms that are already being asked about, and companies and governments already have interest in, and that's gene therapies for space travel, gene therapies for different working environments. I think that this is going to expand really quickly, and wow, the outcome, in 15 years, we'll have some good data. You know, we won't know how long we can extend human lifespan, but we'll have some sort of guesstimate, because the biomarkers will be better, and we'll say, based on these biomarkers look similar to a biomarker of a young person, and maybe we can extrapolate how long you'll live, but it'll still be a lot of guesswork. But it's really exciting times. But what we want to make sure as a company, that if we find regeneration in 80% of the body, how do we figure out what 20% of the body is not being affected? And how do we affect that 20% of the body? Let's just say, because I'm putting this in broad terms, that's our company's goal. So your drug does this, but what does it not do? So we're going to be analyzing a lot of data on the human body, and we're going to get some good AI group. We've already got one picked out that we want to work with. And then they'll start extrapolating more on the data. But without human data, there's not much that can come out of that system but guesswork. You know, how biology works in a human is very different than how we might assume that it works in a data in, data out system. We actually need to see what happens, and that is the power of human data.
Yes, that's right. I mean, systems biology is, by all means, a very good tool, but it's not quite biology yet, is it?
No, it's not. And again, it's a garbage in, garbage out sort of scenario. It's getting a lot better, but we need to understand, you know, I mean, think in 25 years, we'll have such a better understanding of not just the human genome, because that's not the only thing that's important, but the microbiome. I mean, you know, a lot of things get left out. You know, we've got millions of genes in there that are coding for outcomes, whereas, you know, the human body itself only has about 20,000 independent, not with that microbiome. And we know that microbiome is affecting us in the virome, and getting the understanding on that. I mean, you know, really the perfect patient data is everything. It's not just a whole genome sequencing and then throw a gene therapy in and see what happens in basic biomarkers. The ideal analysis of a patient is what's going on in their entire body. And much of that still has to be vetted out. And so that's where AI can help us. But it can also, machine learning can help us extraordinarily in looking at the data of the things that we know of known outcome, and then looking at things that we don't know yet and trying to paint that picture in data and help us, you know, find those details that we need to find in order to make even better data. So people will say, well, there's not really good biomarkers for aging, and there's not these things yet, so maybe you should wait. Well, we don't want to wait. You know, certainly we were treating with antibiotics and immunizations long before we had the long-term outcome data. And so we really don't have time to wait on the therapeutics, but I'm excited about the whole picture coming into place. And I think this human data is actually going to help us get that. We certainly wouldn't want a human body that looked and formed and functioned like it was 20, but only lived for 1 year, you know? So we have to drill in and find out what's happening.
Absolutely. And look, I think that we've got a massive amount of people cheering you on here and who want to see you succeed and this industry succeed, because if you guys succeed, then we all succeed. So we're right behind you. And just imagine, I'd just like to say, you've just got such courage and the intelligence and the vision and the, you know, the proactivity that you guys have, especially you. The courage to do what you've done is just outstanding. You know, a lot of people think about doing these sorts of things that don't. So I'm glad that you've actually taken like a, you know, strides forward and put yourself, you know, had the courage to put yourself in line here. So thank you.
Thank you. I always tell people, you know, like, I'm so happy that people are excited about that. I always make sure that people know there's no heroes, there's only us. And the minute that you realize that, remember, my son got sick and he has type 1 diabetes. And every day, like right now, I'm running his blood sugar. He's on a plane, so I have no data right now. But you know, every day he could die. And I think that really keeps things clear in your head. That creates a picture that we need to do something. And I just had that feeling. But this is not a zero-sum game. This is not about Bioviva. This is not about me. This is about us as a species. We are not here to be the biggest company in the world. We are here to help us live a long time. And I think that in the near future, that's not going to matter. It's not going to matter how much money we each encompass. It's going to be the lifestyle that we live through, you know, new automations and AI and all of the fantastic things that are coming. But right now we still have to lift the whole world up. We still have to give access to everyone to just basic health care. And when we solve that problem, we can get on to bigger things. And I don't think those things have to do with money the way that they do now. And so again, we're not a company that's striving out there to be the best. We have always asked for people to join us. And a lot of people get into the zero-sum game and they're like, oh, you know, well, we're competing against you to raise money, but we've never been that company. We've always been set up to be a platform to actually help other companies raise money. So hopefully we can get into the mindset that this is not a Liz thing. This is not a Bioviva thing. It's not a this company or that company. It's all of us working together to do something. And I think the benefits will be extraordinary. And, you know, I always say, if you have an irritation with our company or something like that, you know, I'm always like, tell me. I love constructive criticism. And whenever somebody criticizes us, I'm always like, join the company and fix the problem. You see something you don't like, either fix it or, you know, get involved in your life in another way. But this is not a zero-sum game. It's not about one company being the best. It's about actually performing. And if I wanted to make money, I would be in something else. Let's just some other company. I would have just made soap.
One of the most extraordinary books. Yeah, one of the most extraordinary books that I've has been Robert Wright's Non-Zero. Have you read that?
No, I didn't.
So
I haven't.
good.
I didn't.
It's so good. But I mean, I'm pretty sure you understand the concept thanks to the way you talk. I mean, the idea that the book's called Non-Zero, and it talks about the ways that civilization has developed to create positive sum games, and that's part of the reason why we're here now, is because on balance the contributions that society, that people can give to society. The positive sum games has really gotten us to where we are now. It has a lot to do with the reason why we are here. And there's all sort of analogues in nature that goes through as well, which is really interesting. Yeah.
It's
a book I totally recommend.
The balance is so interesting because I've talked to people about this before. Private industry and private money drives innovation. So that's where we look for our money, is from private investors who want to make a lot of money, because there is money here for them to make. There's a lot of money. But the truth of the matter is progress takes everybody. So how do we make sure that money comes in, money goes evenly, investors are really excited? Well, that's why we built a platform, because the one drug application is many times a losing battle. The ability to get one drug through phase 3, the failure rate is immense. You know, it's over 90% failure rate for a drug. So how do we make sure a drug's going to make it? You know, we get that data, you know, so the platform idea is the winning idea, because we actually then can become, you know, the multi-armed monster of every company that comes in, and actually creating cost-effective, you know, therapeutics where companies don't have to suffer, you know, trying to raise funding. Think about it. Regulation's 15 years, but how many years is it going to take you to raise the money to go through the regulatory body? We have to speed up this process. We want safe drugs. We want, you know, drugs to go out to the population that are safe. We just want them to be available to people who need them now, and to be collecting the data on them to help them get to more people as they need them.
Absolutely. What a great mission. And yes, well, I've taken up more time than I'd actually said I would. So I'm really, yeah, I've just been really enthusiastic about it too. It's such an amazing journey you're on. So yeah, really great to listen to you, Liz. So yeah, it's been wonderful. If there's any sort of final thoughts or something you'd like people to take away that I haven't asked specifically about, yeah, what would that be to conclude here? Because I know you're a busy person, you've got lots to do.
Well, I think that the most important thing is that, you know, we realize that the route that everyone is going is important. It's really important to not discredit companies for what they're doing, because we really don't know where the next cures are coming from. You know, a lot of people will get on the fence, or one side of the fence or the other, and they'll say, well, you know, this therapy is not the way to go. This therapy is the way to go. That's not what we need. We need people to focus on what they love doing. We need people to focus on what they're trying to achieve, and we need to see how those things work. And so I think the important thing is that community comes together not to discredit or try to tear down other people's ideas, but we actually start to lift each other up. Because when we lift each other up, we're really going to work better. We're going to function better. And we're going to have better outcomes. People say, oh, what do you think of this drug? What do you think of that drug? It's really not up to me to be skeptical. It's up to the data to show whether the therapeutic works or not. And so I think that what I would ask people to do is to be open-minded, to be loving, to be caring, and to really consider what's ethical and how we should be moving forward as the human race, and how we should be tackling the bigger social issues while we deal with the scientific issues.
Absolutely. Well, yes, cheers. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And I'm totally with you on the ethical question there as well. I mean, you know, like there's a medical triage problems that people try and, you know, rattle their brains over, trolley problems and all that too. But instead of just theorizing about it and, you know, in couches and sitting down and sort of talking about it, you're actually doing something which is worth trading dollars.
It is kind of crazy when you see, you know, really big name researchers, and then they say, oh, such and such therapy won't work. And that's so unacademic to say when we don't have the data, you know. And so I'm just here to be a moderator as long as you need me. And then I want you guys to all go on with your bad selves and get your own thing going on. I'm just here as long as people need me. I always say I'm just the doormat to get something done. So use it and try not to abuse it, and let's get something done. Let's get some actual data instead of, you know, speculating what will work and what won't. Let's just find out.
Totally agree. It's been fantastic talking to you again.
It's been fantastic talking to you.
Know,
yeah, it's been fantastic talking to you. It's been a couple years, I think, at least.
Yeah, right.
And sorry,
I'm so
tired.
I mean, and there's a lot of things have happened in between, and so it's really great personally and have the chance to talk to you again. I hope to see you in person one day at a conference.
Yes.
I don't know if there are any in Australia that you'll ever come along to, but who knows where in the world I'll be in the next couple of years. So.
Yeah, I would love to come to Australia. One of the people who's working for the company right now is in New Zealand and Australia and Fiji and other things. She's on a vacation, just so you know, but she's working while she's on vacation, and I would love to come down there. Anyway, I'm the same person you met before. I intend to die the same person you met when we first met. And but hopefully we will die very genetically different than we are now, if at all.
Fantastic. Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, it's been wonderful having you, Liz. I understand you got a lot to do, so yeah, I'll let you go do that. But okay. Yeah, and good luck in the UK and everything. So thanks.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our viewers too for tuning in. And if you like what you've experienced today, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Cheers.
Bye.